My parents kicked me out at 16 after taking my $63,000 inheritance. But years later, I made them face the one thing they feared most. My name is Nora, and for as long as I can remember, I knew I was never the chosen child. I was born in Springfield, a small town in Missouri. I have a twin sister named Lily, and if I was the shadow, she was the spotlight. Even on the day we were born, my mom would proudly laugh and say, "Lily cried first, so I knew she was the stronger one." That seemingly harmless sentence turned out to foreshadow a childhood drowned in coldness and neglect. Lily had her own upstairs bedroom painted lavender with lace-trimmed curtains, a white wooden bed frame, and a closet always full of new dresses. Me? I slept in the basement. Every time I walked down the creaky wooden stairs, the hinges groaned like a reminder that this wasn't a place for a child. It was a storage space made livable. Damp walls, low ceiling, the smell of dust, and cold air. That's where I grew up. There wasn't a single family photo where I stood in the center. On our 10th birthday, my parents threw a backyard party full of balloons and cake for Lily. I stood by the fence with a paper plate, eating the smallest slice of cake, and heard someone ask my mom, "What about that other girl?" My mom just laughed. "Oh, that's Nora. She's quiet, not into all this noise. No one ever asked what I liked." At school, I studied hard and always ranked near the top. The first time I got a district math award, I rushed home and held it out to my dad. He glanced at it and nodded. "Yeah, okay. But you should learn more from Lily. She's outgoing and bubbly. That's the kind of personality people want." I gripped the certificate so hard the edge tore. Lily joined cheerleading, theater, and photography club. My parents attended every performance, always sitting in the front row. Me? If I participated at all, it was usually cleaning up after a club event. No one remembered to invite my parents. Lily got new clothes every holiday, a winter ball gown, sweaters for Thanksgiving, Nike sneakers for each new school year. I wore old t-shirts from a cousin in Nebraska, 2 sizes too big with a stretched-out collar and logos from a team I'd never heard of. Once, I asked Mom why I couldn't get new jeans, and she flatly said, "You don't need them. It's not like you go out much." Lily was the little princess of the house. Me? I once overheard Mom say I was the extra part we didn't plan for. I was 9, hiding behind the living room door, gripping the frame so tight my fingertips turned white. I didn't cry. I was used to it by then. Every evening I ate quickly, washed the dishes, and headed to the basement as soon as I could. Not because I didn't want to be around my family, but because every time I was there, it felt like I was sitting at a table I was never invited to. I once asked Mom quietly, "Did I do something wrong?" She didn't look at me and just replied, "Don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable, Nora." I understood, in this house, my very existence was an inconvenience. So, I learned not to bother anyone, even when my heart screamed to be loved. I turned 16 on a gray September morning when the first autumn winds crept through the cracks in the basement. I wasn't expecting anything. No cake, no greetings. But I didn't know that would be the day I was pushed out of the home I had lived in for 16 years. I was folding my blanket after waking up when I heard hurried footsteps upstairs. Then Mom's voice called out, "Nora, come up here." Her tone sounded cheerful, strange. I climbed the stairs just in time to see Lily holding her stomach, spinning around the dining table, shouting, "A baby! It's really a baby!" My parents stood beside her, glowing like they'd won the lottery. I stood at the doorway confused until my mom turned to me and nodded. "She's pregnant. We're going to be grandparents." I didn't know how to react. I glanced at Lily, my twin sister, only 16, now about to become a mother. 3 weeks later, it happened. That night, I came home from my shift at the convenience store, still holding a cup of instant noodles, and saw Mom sitting in the living room looking unusually serious. She patted the seat beside her. "Nora," she began, "we've talked it over with Lily's situation. We need to make room for the baby." I nodded slightly, unsure where this was going. She continued, "Your basement room isn't suitable. We'll move Lily and the baby down there. It's quiet and draft-free. You'll need to give up the upstairs bedroom." I froze. "But I'm already in the basement." "I mean," she said, as if it were completely normal, "you'll have to move out. We need the whole house for Lily's new family." I let out a dry laugh, thinking she was joking, but her face was stone serious. "You're 16 now. It's time to learn independence. Lots of teens your age work and rent their own places. I believe you can do it." "I have nowhere to go," I whispered. "There's a tent in the shed," my dad chimed in from the kitchen. "We still have that camping tent from last year's trip." I didn't say anything else. I knew their minds were made up. That night, I dragged my one suitcase out to the backyard and set up a tent on the dry grass. The ground was hard and cold. Dew seeped through the fabric. I curled up in my sleeping bag, holding it tight as if it could shield me from the biting autumn wind. From inside the tent, I could still hear Lily laughing through the open upstairs window. My parents fussed over her, took her to the doctor, and decorated the nursery with pale yellow wallpaper and a shiny new crib. I ate instant noodles and studied by flashlight. I kept going to school but stopped bringing lunch. During break, I went to the library and used the microwave to heat up canned soup from the discount store. At night, I worked at a bakery 3 blocks from home, washing trays, mopping floors, packing pastries, anything for a few spare dollars and leftover bread. No one asked how I was doing out there. No one asked if I was cold or hungry. Just once, the bakery owner, Mr. Dwight, handed me a thick, worn-out coat he no longer used. "Kid, snow's coming," he said without asking questions, but I saw his eyes were red. I knew what I had to do. I started saving every tip, every $5 bill, tucking them into a shoebox hidden beneath my sleeping bag. I didn't know where I'd go or when I'd have enough, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't staying in that tent forever. I wasn't going to be forgotten. I still remember that morning like it was yesterday. The temperature was near freezing, and my hands were too numb to press the microwave button in the library. I sat shivering by the window, watching the last leaves fall. A gust of wind slipped through the torn collar of my jacket, and I nearly broke down, but I wouldn't let myself cry. Tears would freeze before anyone saw them. After school, I dragged my feet past a bakery on the corner of Maple and 4th. The smell of warm bread and melting butter drifted through the thick glass. My stomach growled violently. I stood there, hands deep in my pockets, just meaning to look for a minute. "Can I help you?" a man's voice called out. I jumped. A middle-aged man stood at the back door of the bakery, hands on hips, wearing a flour-dusted apron. He looked at me, not with pity, not with annoyance, just plainly, like he'd seen 100 kids standing in that very spot before. "I'm looking for a part-time job," I said softly but firmly. He nodded slowly. "Name's Walter. I need someone to wash trays and pack leftover goods at the end of the day. Doesn't pay much, but I'll cover dinner. Can you handle that?" I nodded so fast my knit hat nearly fell off. That night, I scrubbed flour-crusted pans, boxed up leftover pastries, swept the floors, wiped the windows, and stacked paper bags. Mr. Walter didn't say much, but before I left, he handed me a heavy paper bag, 2 croissants, a loaf of sandwich bread, and a bottle of apple juice. "Eat it now, don't save it. Bread's best when it's warm." I sat on the back steps of the bakery, feeling my stomach truly full for the first time in weeks. I worked every evening without fail at 5 o'clock sharp. I'd be there, never missing a shift. Mr. Walter slowly began to talk more. He told me the bakery Sunrise Oven was passed down from his father, that he once went bankrupt because he trusted the wrong friend, and that he never threw away edible bread because he had once lived in a truck for a long time. One evening, as I was packing loaves into paper bags, he asked, "Nora, where are you staying?" I hesitated, then quietly said, "I live in a tent in my parents' backyard." He went silent for a few seconds. "That's not okay. It's freezing out there." I didn't respond. He didn't ask again. 2 days later, after closing up, he handed me a small key. "There's a room upstairs. It used to be storage, but now it's just got a few empty boxes. If you want, you can sleep there. It's not much, but it has heat and electricity." I froze for a few seconds. I didn't know what to say, so I just bowed my head. "I'll keep it clean, I promise." The room really was small. Just enough space for an old mattress and a chipped wooden desk. But compared to the cold, hard ground and nightly wind, it was heaven. From that day on, my life found a new rhythm. School in the morning, bakery in the afternoon, homework and sleep in the tiny attic room above Sunrise Oven. I began tracking my income, budgeting my spending, dividing money into small envelopes: food, savings, emergencies. Walter taught me, money is a tool, Nora, not salvation, not the enemy. Use it right and you'll protect yourself. He didn't pat shoulders or give flowery praise, but every time I carefully wrapped bread, wiped down the tables, or neatly balanced the books, he'd give a small nod. That alone made me feel like I mattered. I saved every dollar, used coupons, picked up day-old goods from the discount store. On nights I still had energy, I shoveled snow for the nail salon nearby, or helped stock shelves at the corner grocery. I was no longer the lost girl behind a house. I was rewriting my story page by page, and I knew this was just the first chapter. I bought my first house in the spring of my 21st year. It wasn't a grand home with a wide porch and white fence or a rose garden like the ones I used to cut out from old magazines, but to me, it was a dream come true. A single-story brick house in the suburbs of Claymont, Delaware, with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a front yard just big enough for pots of yellow chrysanthemums. I remember exactly how it felt to hold the keys for the first time. My hand trembled as I slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open, releasing the scent of old wood and sun-drenched dust. I stepped inside, overwhelmed by the strange blend of freedom and fear. No more pounding on the door from my mother, no more cold stares from my father, or Lily's laughter echoing from across the hallway. Just me and this quiet space. Everything I had now was the result of years of tireless work. After high school, I took online classes at night while working at the bakery during the day and helping at a local bookstore on weekends. Walter, my quiet mentor, watched over every step. When I told him the bank approved my mortgage, he just smiled and handed me a box of pastries with a handwritten note: "The only time I'll support someone leaving Sunrise Oven." The house I bought wasn't new or fancy by anyone else's standards. The walls still had floral wallpaper from the 1980s, and the carpet was a dull gray. But I loved every scratch on the window pane, every chipped brick on the front step. Each flaw reminded me I made it here on my own. I started with an old mattress, a second-hand wooden table I found online, and a budget set of pots from the supermarket. Every item I brought home made me proud. I didn't need much, just enough to live and know that for the first time in my life, no one could take this away from me. I still worked at Sunrise Oven every morning and spent my evenings fixing up the house, repairing leaking pipes, repainting walls, building bookshelves. I learned from tutorials and sometimes got help from neighbors, like Martha, an elderly woman who brought over baked goods and stories from her youth, or Theo, a college student living with his stepmom who sometimes helped me move heavy furniture. But I never invited anyone inside. The house was sacred, proof of everything I had endured and overcome. One late May evening, as I sat on the front step sipping iced tea and watching the sunset, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. The voice on the other end made my heart skip. "Nora, it's Mom." I said nothing. "We heard you bought a house," she continued, voice light as a breeze. "We should see each other. What do you think? Me, your father, and Lily. We're all so happy for you." I heard Lily's laugh in the background, as cheerful as ever, but it no longer made my chest tighten. "I'm busy," I replied shortly. "I just want you to know, no matter what, you're still part of the family." Family? That word almost made me laugh. I hung up without another word. Sitting there in the golden light of the porch, I realized something. I was no longer the trembling girl in a tent staring through a window at someone else's dinner. I had my own kitchen, my own bed, and, most importantly, my own voice. I was mowing the lawn on a Saturday afternoon when I heard brakes screech outside the gate. I looked up and saw a familiar silver SUV parked at the curb. For a second, my chest tightened. My father stepped out first, more gray-haired than I remembered, but his eyes still cold and proud. Behind him came my mother, holding a canvas bag, wearing a smile I'd never seen directed at me. Then Lily, wearing a tight shirt, carrying her youngest, trailed by 2 other kids racing across my lawn. A strange man, probably Lily's husband, got out last, surveying the house like he was sizing up an investment. I turned off the mower, wiped my hands on my jeans, and watched them walk up. "Nora," my mother chirped. "We dropped by out of the blue. Hope you don't mind." I didn't respond. I looked at her, then at my father. "We heard you have your own place now," Dad said, arms crossed. "We're all proud. Our little girl's grown up." "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "Lily's having a hard time," my mother said quickly. "Her place is too small, and she's pregnant with her fourth. We lost our retirement checks and can't afford the old apartment. So, we thought maybe it's time the family came together, lived under one roof, supported each other like a real family." I laughed. Not loud, not bitter, just a dry little laugh. "Together," I repeated. "The last time we were together, you threw me out to make space for Lily. I slept in a tent in the snow. You all had dinner and threw her a baby shower." "That's support?" "Don't dwell on the past," my mom snapped softly, trying to stay composed. "Every family makes mistakes, but now you have a house and stability. We just want to live with you and start over." "No," I said clearly. "I don't owe any of you, and this house isn't a hotel." Lily stepped up, frowning. "Nora, that's selfish. I'm your sister. My kids need a stable home. Don't you care at all?" I looked her in the eye. "When I was 16 and shivering in that tent, did you ever ask if I was cold or hungry? Or were you too busy showing off your new crib in what used to be my room?" Her husband chimed in. "Hey, no need to be harsh. We won't stay long, just a few months." I turned to him, my voice icy. "Who are you? Ken? Lily's husband?" he said, offering his hand. "I'm sure we can work something out." I didn't shake his hand. "There's nothing to work out." Silence fell. My mom forced a smile, tugging at her shirt. "Nora, we're blood. How long do you think you can live alone in this house? You'll get lonely. And when you do, family is all you'll have left." I looked at her, and the memories crashed down. Being kicked out of bed, sent to the backyard, the sound of the door locking, Lily's laughter in the room I once called home. "I used to believe that," I said, "that family was everything. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't who gives birth to you. It's who doesn't leave you out in the cold." I opened the gate and pointed outside. "Get off my property. From now on, this is the boundary." Lily flushed. My mom froze. My father stepped back like he couldn't believe I dared say it. "You'll regret this, Nora," my mother hissed. "You can't deny your blood forever." "Blood doesn't grant you access to my home," I replied, and slammed the gate shut. I stood still for a long moment, listening as the engine started and faded into the distance. My heart pounded. My hands still shook, but I felt light. 2 weeks after I forced them off my property, a thick envelope arrived at my address. It was a letter from a law office representing my parents. They had officially filed a lawsuit demanding shared ownership of the house I lived in. Their reasoning? The family property was purchased with shared funds and contributions from multiple members. I read the letter over and over, each word cutting like a dull blade. This house came from baking at dawn before the sun rose. From every dollar I saved scrubbing floors, hauling flour, shoveling snow, mowing lawns, from nights spent shivering in the bakery attic, hugging an online textbook, and dreaming of a real home. And now they dared to say it belonged to the family. I didn't freeze or cry like I used to. I grabbed my phone and called a law office Walter had once recommended, people who had helped him with a contract dispute. The attorney was a sharp, no-nonsense black woman in her 40s named Denise Warner. After reviewing the file, she frowned. "They won't go down easy, but if you have proof you independently paid for the house, we can flip this case." I nodded. "I've kept everything. Pay stubs, transfer receipts, savings logs, even the bank's loan approval email." Denise leaned back, her eyes lighting up. "Good. But one more thing. I want to check your grandfather's estate. If he's the only one who ever truly cared about you, there's a chance he left something in your name." I stayed quiet for a moment, then whispered, "No one's ever told me anything about that." Denise shrugged. "Then we'll find out." 3 weeks later, she called me into her office and placed a thick file on the desk. "Sit tight," she said, completely serious. According to the legal documents, my grandfather had left me a savings account of over $60,000, clearly stated in his will to be transferred only when I turned 18. However, within a year of his passing, all of it had been withdrawn. The authorized signature? My mother, Margaret. I reviewed the bank records, Denise continued. The entire amount was moved into a joint account under my parents' names, then gradually used to pay off their mortgage debt, fund Lily's wedding, and support Ken's startup, my sister's husband. I went numb. Oh, I whispered, they let me sleep in a tent while spending the money my grandfather left for me. Denise nodded slowly. They embezzled your inheritance. And here's the important part. Your grandfather explicitly wrote in his will that Nora should not be financially dependent on her parents if they failed to legally care for her. He saw this coming. The feeling wasn't rage. It was something colder, emptiness, the kind that hits when you realize the people who once called themselves family could be that calculated. Can we sue them? I asked, my voice rough. Denise didn't answer right away. She slid a document across the desk. This is a civil suit for inheritance theft and will fraud. If you're ready to fight, I'll go all the way with you. I signed without hesitation. The case was filed with the county court a week later. I knew the papers had arrived because Lily, my cousin and the only one who still spoke to me, sent a short message. Mom's panicking. Dad's calling every lawyer he knows. I didn't reply. What followed was a full-on legal storm. My family tried everything to smear me, that I was poor but greedy, ungrateful, making things up to grab more than I deserved. But for every lie they launched, Denise countered with a stack of proof. Bank statements, mortgage documents, handwritten notes from my grandfather, even a photo of me curled up in the backyard tent taken by a former neighbor who had once considered calling child services. The final hearing took place on a cloudy Monday morning in a modest courtroom in Newcastle County. I wore the white button-up shirt Walter had bought me when I landed my first job at the bakery, a quiet reminder that I wasn't walking into this alone. My parents sat on the other side of the room, tense, avoiding eye contact. Lily wasn't there, but their lawyer, a silver-haired man with polished words, tried to justify the unjustifiable. I sat beside Denise, gripping my file. I wasn't afraid like I thought I'd be. I had survived winter in a tent, climbed from bakery floors to home ownership. No one here could shake me now. When the judge read the verdict, the room went still. Time seemed to freeze. After a full review of the evidence, including the original will, financial transaction records, and related testimonies, the court orders the defendants, Mr. and Mrs. Patrick and Margaret Callahan, to repay the full inheritance amount of $63,000 to the plaintiff, along with $18,000 in damages. My father lowered his head. My mother opened her mouth as if to protest, but no words came. And from this point forward, the judge added, the defendants have no legal claim to the plaintiff's current property. I didn't cry. I took a deep breath and let the cold courtroom air wash over every old wound. Outside, Denise given my shoulder a gentle tap. You did it, Nora. I nodded, smiling faintly. Not because I won, but because for the first time in my life, I felt free. In the days that followed, the calls poured in. Some from Mom, A from Lily, and, most surprisingly, a short message from my father. Can we talk? I read it, then deleted it. No reply. I knew what talking with them meant. It was always a monologue where they were right, and I was the problem. I no longer felt the need to apologize for existing. I no longer needed approval from people who never saw me as a daughter, a sister, or even a person. I blocked all their numbers, changed my email, and, for the first time, I wrote a letter to myself. In it, I wrote, "You're not the extra piece. You're the gift that was misplaced." I folded the letter and placed it in my grandfather's old wooden box, the one that held the only keepsakes I still owned. That letter wasn't meant to be read again. It was simply the final punctuation to a chapter that had gone on too long. As time passed, I returned to my routine, baking in the early mornings, studying in the evenings, and spending quiet afternoons on my porch with a cup of hot tea. Walter had retired, but still dropped by once a month with cookies and his warm smile. "This house smells like victory," he liked to joke. I also started hosting weekend baking classes for kids in the neighborhood, something I never thought I'd do. Every time I saw their tiny hands kneading dough and giggling, I remembered the days I wished someone had taught me how not to burn the tart crust. Now, I was that person, the one I had needed. One day, while cleaning up after class, a curly-haired little girl walked up and asked, "Miss Nora, does your family like your baking?" I paused for a second, then smiled. "Not really," I said, "but now I have a different kind of family, one that knows how to love, right?" Family? I used to think it was something fixed, unchangeable, but I've come to learn family isn't who shares your blood. It's who doesn't abandon you in the cold, who doesn't steal your chance to live and call it sacrifice. Family is who stays when everyone else walks away. And now I am exactly where I'm meant to be. In the end, I truly lived. My story isn't just about surviving abandonment. It's proof that pain isn't the ending. I learned to rise from nothing, build my life with my own hands, and redefine what family means. Blood doesn't guarantee love, and sometimes, to live fully, you have to let go of the most toxic ties. I'm no longer the girl left behind. I'm the one writing a brand new chapter for herself.